Well, here we are.
It's our first interview, man. Who are you?
Alone at last. I am Jackie Chan, and I'm here to talk about my new movie.
If only. I wouldn't be sitting so
Right.
close.
It'll be like Twong Kong Nights, based on the Twitter community. So
Where are we?
we are in Silicon Valley, California. We're in my house. This is my home office. This is where all the power emanates from here.
Pretty sweet.
The new book's out. All Top is out. I'm pretty busy, traveling a lot.
Yeah.
But mostly it's book and All Top right now.
The book's really interesting. It surprised me.
What surprised me? Hey, I find
You
your
have a lot
blog.
of good stories.
I find your blog interesting once in a while.
Once in a
It
while.
surprises me. Yeah. No, the book is just a compilation of my best of. If you really want to look at it the right way, what you should do is, this is Art of the Start,
Yeah.
right? And this is Reality Check. And look at the difference in thickness.
Yeah.
See? It's twice the value.
Twice the value, same price?
Twice the value and 20% more.
What was the purpose of the book?
There's two answers, right? So one answer is because I had this knowledge I wanted to spread to make the world a better place, empower people to know about social media and entrepreneurship. The other answer is royalty. I got a big advance.
Yep.
So between the two, that'll get you going. But
Isn't that the trick to getting a startup going, getting some loyal customers?
I think so. I think the key to a startup today, like an online startup, is Twitter. I am just so sold on Twitter. I only wish that Dave Weiner and Laura Fitton had pounded on me to join earlier, but because it started at Gnomedex a year and a half ago, that those two people did it. But I think Twitter is, arguably the most powerful branding mechanism since television. Man, it is so useful. I just can't. I can't even begin to comprehend how I could do All Top without it. For All Top, the people on Twitter provide us with ideas for topics, the feeds for the topics, and then they voluntarily market the topic once it's done. I have, I'm small potatoes compared to you. I only have 30,000 followers, but we have this thing where people have volunteered so that whenever we post a new All Top topic, it goes into their stream automatically. So we have 440 people who have done that. And if you added up all their followers, that adds up to 100,000 people. Yeah. So whenever we announce a new All Top topic, there's 30,000 from me, 100,000 from them. So it's 130,000 basic impressions for free and instant. I mean, how can you beat that?
You've been a VC and you've been around, and you're now a journalist because you're on Twitter.
Yeah, right. I'm a social media guy.
What's and you talk about this in your book. What's a great presentation, a good pitch,
Well, I think the essence to a good pitch is you do it in 10 slides. It's like the famous 10, 20, 30 rule, right? So 10 slides, 20 minutes, and 30-point font. But over and above that, I think
30 font is pretty big. Yeah.
Well, but
so you can
people
only
are pretty old.
20 words on a slide.
It's kind of like 140 characters in Twitter, 30-point font in PowerPoint, same purpose.
So you went to the Steve Jobs School of Presentations?
I can't tell you that. Well, he has one word, right? Like he has like I
maybe
don't know,
three.
Cool or something, right? That's his thing. But he uses a lot of slides. But his slides are, they're not so much informational, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
They're emotional.
Yeah, they're emotional. They're like everyone says great, up and to the right, all that kind of stuff. So I don't. That's not my theory. I believe in fewer slides, but text that a day later you would understand what it meant. So like in my speech, if I say as a recommendation, jump to the next curve, hopefully the next day people look at that and say, oh, I know what he's talking about. He's saying don't just do incremental improvement, jump to the next curve. Well, Steve's slide would say revolutionary. Okay, what was that about, right? But I am not Steve Jobs any more than Dan Quayle is, JFK, right?
What would you do if you were at GM right now, running GM?
Running GM?
Yeah.
I sell to Toyota. I don't.
There's no hope.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I would have sold Yahoo to Microsoft, right?
Me too.
And that's not even with hindsight. I said, that day, $46 billion, man, Jerry, take the money, you gotta run, you got a life. I have a hard time feeling sympathy for, or that we should rescue these car companies because so many jobs are involved. I mean, same thing with the bailout. I can't get around. I can't get my mind around the fact that. So let's see what happens. So we got these greedy people loaning money to people making $50,000 a year to buy $1 million houses, and you didn't see any problems coming down the road. So now we have to rescue you. I understand that. And you guys, you're making Suburbans that weigh 6,000 pounds, 10 miles per gallon, and you thought, well, that won't be a problem when gas is $5. You know. If Twitter were in trouble, yeah, the federal government should give them $700 billion. Now that's an asset worth saving.
Tell me about the old school Apple.
Old school Apple.
Because you worked there back in what, 83, 84?
Yeah, that's like a different century. That was a great.
I was still
time.
in high school then.
I'm surprised you're born then. It was a great time. It was like going to Disneyland every day and getting paid with stock options. Man, was it fun? I mean, we changed the world. Well, we changed 5% of the world. I guess the other 95% copied it, but that was a great time. It was. A lot of us in the Mac division have spent the rest of our lives trying to recreate something as much fun. I think you get to do that once in your life. So yeah, we're going to change the world. Had this new computer. We believed, right down to our inner core, that we would change the world with that computer. That was a great feeling. It's not that easy to catch that kind of feeling in your life.
Have you seen anything in the Valley since? Maybe Google?
Well, you could make the case that Google, right, changed the world. I would love to see a company that becomes the Apple of clean tech, right? That literally changes the world, right? That would be something.
I mean, the book has a lot in it.
We did the book. Well, people just buy it. That would be the,
We can just
end
do
the
the random
discussion.
thing, Like, how do you drive your competition crazy? There you go.
Well, you focus on your customer, not on the competition. That's the key to that. I think what drives people's competition crazy the most is when you are successful and they're not.
Yeah.
Right? And so the way you drive your competition crazy is not to do something to them, but you do something for your customer.
Yeah.
And very few companies understand that. And if they would just do that, what drives me crazy about Microsoft when I used to work at Apple was that they were so successful. It's not anything they did to us per se, but the fact that, how can they have 95% market share? We have 5%. Like, what's wrong with this world? That drove me crazy. So the key here is, do what's right for your customer. And then, A, you might get so much joy out of doing what's right for your customer, you don't care about driving your customer crazy. And B, if you cared, you probably will be driving your customer crazy. So, I think that's the key. So go ahead, open another place. You trying to test me to make sure I really wrote the book? There's no ghost?
I don't know. That's random. The sticking point. I forget this chapter. What was that all about?
Sticking point is Dan and Chip Heath. It's like, blink with instructions, or no, not blink. Tipping point with instructions. That's what the sticking point is.
What do you mean by the sticking point then?
Well, it's actually called Made to Stick. Okay. The book's called Made to Stick.
Oh, that's right.
And everybody read The Tipping Point and loved it, as I did. But one of the shortcomings, I think, and I don't think Malcolm Gladwell intended it to do this, so it's not a really shortcoming from his perspective, is he wrote about the phenomenon of how some stuff, hush puppies, iPods, whatever, at some point they just tip. And then everybody has to have a white cord hanging out of your ear, or everybody has to have suede shoes. So as an entrepreneur, if you read that book, you say, God, that's it. The scales have been removed from my eyes. Now I understand. I need to tip. So, I sit here every day thinking, what's going to make all top tip, right? Someday, random people will be on an airplane together, and the guy will say, yeah, I'm into wine. And the other guy will say, wow, you ought to go to wine.alltop, right? That's the tipping point. The problem with, or not the problem, the shortcoming of the tipping point is, how do you get to the tipping point? Now we all know we need to tip. How do you get there? Could Steve Jobs point to one day that the iPod tipped? I doubt it. Yeah. I think one of the lessons of entrepreneurship is that it is about grinding it out. Yeah. And maybe the human mind just plays tricks with you, and you say, oh, one day YouTube tipped, and one day, well, Google is probably the only example of it just kept going like that, right? But I don't know, all top goes like that, comes back down, goes up. It's not. I wish it were like that. I don't know many companies that just go straight to the moon like that. Alltop answers a very different question than Google. With Google, you ask the question, how many people live in China? with Alltop, he asked the question, how do I stay on top of what's happening in China? So, with Google, you ask, who is Robert Scoble? With Eagles.Alltop, you ask, what is Scoble and Weiner and Calacanis and Kawasaki saying? It's a very different question.
So here's a chapter. Is your boss an asshole?
Yeah, is your boss an asshole? Well, that chapter is really an interview with Bob Sutton, who wrote...
I love his book, too, which is a book of the same
what
name.
is the name of his book?
The No Asshole Rule.
Yeah, the No Asshole Rule.
He's a professor at Stanford,
Yeah, he's
and
a
he gets
great
away
guy.
with having a
well,
book title like that.
Harvard Business School Press was where he was at, and they didn't want to publish that title, literally the title. So that's why he went to another place. And the gist of that book is, life is too short to work for assholes.
So why did you work for Steve Jobs then?
Why did he?
No, why did you work for Steve Jobs?
Well, it was a great experience. There are it's sort of a 2x2 matrix, right? On one side you have like asshole, not asshole, brilliant, not brilliant, right? So the worst corner is you're an asshole who's not brilliant. There are many of those. The best corner is you're brilliant but not an asshole, right?
Like Wozniak.
But yeah, exactly. But then there is a corner where you're both. But that's still better than being an asshole who's not brilliant. So the question, there's several questions this brings up. One is, did brilliant people become assholes, or were they assholes and that enabled them to become brilliant because of their focus, their whatever, right? So that's which came first. And then there's the other question, which is, I think some people say, that person is brilliant and an asshole, so it's okay for me to act like an asshole. The problem with that is you don't have the brilliant part, right? So not every asshole is brilliant, although not every brilliant person is an asshole. But I don't think that either one necessarily causes the other.
Yeah.
So...
but a lot of what gets attributed to Steve as being an asshole is brilliance.
It's jealousy.
He has a focus of not letting his brand on anything that sucks. And so if you try to put his brand on anything that sucks, you're going to get fired, you're going to get yelled at, you're going to have some pain in your life.
Well, there was the Macintosh Office, if you remember that, but that's a different discussion. There was a time where Michael Dell told Steve Jobs to close Apple down, give the shareholders back their cash, right? Yeah. Fast forward a few years, it's kind of the opposite now, right? So it's just a cyclical thing, and
can anybody beat Steve? Can anybody, who's good? How does the next Steve Jobs get built? Because Steve has such, there's memories in our head of things Steve has done, like paint the factory floor yellow. Do you remember that?
Yellow or black?
I thought it was black or yellow. I thought it was orange.
I wasn't there.
He did something very specific to the factory to make sure it looked really cool when you walked in.
Yeah.
Only somebody like Steve would care about what a factory
Yeah, but you know what? So people hear that kind of story. Okay, so I'll tell you some stories about the back division. In the lobby, we had a Bosendorfer grand piano because one of the administrative aides liked to play piano. Okay, so bringing a Bosendorfer, what the hell, right? There was a BMW bicycle in the lobby. We could fly first class for any flight over 2 hours. We had unlimited supplies of Odwalla, et cetera, et cetera. So you look at that, and people have a very difficult time between causation and correlation. So now, let's take a company full of bozos, and we'll give them a Bosendorfer grand piano, a BMW, let them fly first class, free orange juice. They're not going to create something great. So fast forward now a couple decades, and you look at these pictures of Google headquarters, right? Cafeteria, free washer dryer, free back rubs. They pick you up in the city, bring you down, and you on a bus, and that bus has Wi-Fi the whole way. So you say, that's the key to being a successful company like Google. We have to buy our employees a free bus, give them free food, wash their clothes, give them back rubs. They're missing the whole point, man. It's that happens after the fact. That doesn't cause the fact.
What did your book get wrong, particularly because the economy has completely changed?
Well, I almost made a tragic mistake with that book. I wanted it to be sort of my, my swan song, my last thing, the best of. So I wanted to call the book "To the Best of My Knowledge," right? So it would be to the best, all the best knowledge, right? because I was listening to NPR one day, and you know, and that sounds like an NPR kind of book title, right? To the best of my knowledge, kind of like wait, don't tell me. But my editor said, that's a stupid title, and he said, well, we ought to call it Reality Check because you're talking about reality all the time. I said, yeah, you're right. That's a much better title. So you can't accuse me of NIH. I know what to steal. So that's why it's called Reality Check. Now, this was done a year ago, before, this is when $50,000 a year people were still buying $1 million houses, right? And so it looked like to infinity and beyond, using Bud Lightyear's terms. But I was never one of these, buy a Super Bowl commercial, raise $5 million, buy everybody an Aeron, give them 30-inch monitors, and all that. So that book, I never had that perspective. And it's just plain dumb luck that we didn't call this book How to Profit from the Coming Economic Boom. Because that title probably wouldn't work today, right? Hey, so I have to tell you, do you hear this funny story? So yeah. I did an interview about Twitter, and I said that for me, Twitter is more important than a cell phone. Okay? And I truly do believe that.
Okay.
I could go a week without a cell phone easily, but not Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay? So Mike Arrington sees that and says, okay, guy, I will bet you $1,000 that you cannot go a week without a cell phone. And if you win, if you do it, I'll give the $1,000 to your favorite charity. So I countered. I said, I'll tell you what, Mike, more interesting. You go a week without Twitter, and I'll go a week without a cell phone. And he says, yeah, okay, no problem. And then he disappeared for 3-4 days. So I'm ready to roll, and I can't find him. So maybe if he watches this video, he'll know that I'm still ready, willing, and able. Here's my iPhone, Mike. You can have it. Shut off Twitter for a week. I dare you. What would you rather have, Twitter or a cell phone for a week?
Twitter.
Right?
Twitter.
It's more important, right?
Well, let's...
Or friend feed for you, maybe.
Both. Friend feed and Twitter are combined.
Synonymous?
They're combined because I can write a message on friend feed. It goes to Twitter,
right.
Pulls everybody over to friend feed, and we have a conversation.
So could you go a week without a cell phone?
Yeah, because the only people who call me are PR people.
Okay. But you could not go a week without Twitter, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't. And I don't mean because of its, because it's my social networking bonding mechanism. For me, Twitter is a weapon. It would be like taking away my weapon for 1 week of marketing. That's a big problem. It would be, I don't know, what would be, if I were selling Ginzu knives, calling 1-800-GINZU, and you told me for 1 week your 800 line won't work, it would kill me.
Yeah.
So if Michael Arrington's out there, if you see him, tell him, guy's ready.
Thanks, man. That was fun.
Thank you.
Reality check.
Reality check.
Get the book plug in.
Get the book. Get the book.